Everyone knows that the Detroit Lions drafted cornerback Terrion Arnold at pick number 24. However, though, reports are coming out that the Lions could have very well gone a completely different direction. We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lion.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, old Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, here's the thing, folks. As we know, the NFL draft, it literally just got done, just wrapped up a couple of days ago. So now teams are moving into the next phase of the offseason. They're now moving into getting ready for their programs, whether it's their mini camps, whether it's their volunteer camps, training camps. They're starting to get all that stuff planned and getting ready to go for the next couple of months. However, though, when it comes to the NFL draft, it always, in my opinion, is a very unique event that for fans, they have the ability to, after the draft, and sometimes even during the draft, find out some rather interesting news that is related to their team. Now, when it comes to Lions fans, they definitely just found out something that was very, very fascinating indeed. Like I said, we all know that the Lions drafted cornerback Terrion Arnold out of Alabama at pick number 24. However, it was revealed by Pride of Detroit that had Terrion Arnold not been available when he was available, that rather instead of trading up for him, the Lions were going to instead trade up to go and get edge rusher out of Missouri, Darius Robinson. Now, this is very enticing information. This is very, very interesting information because I'm going to tell you this right now. For many Lions fans, the thought was that what the Lions were going to do, the supposed script, the supposed plan, if you will, was that the Lions were going to take one, a cornerback, and then two, an edge rusher, and that was pretty much what they were going to do. Now, whether or not the cornerback or the edge rusher was the first pick or second pick, nobody knew. But that was the plan, was that, okay, the Lions are going to take a cornerback high, and they're going to take an edge rusher high. Why? Well, they want to get a cornerback to add to their defensive backfield because they want to upgrade that, and the edge rusher because they want to pair opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. That was the thought process. That was the logic. That was the plan. However, what the Lions instead decided to do, or rather what I should say Brad Holmes decided to do, was that he decided that he was going to double down on cornerback, taking cornerback Terrion Arnold at 24, and then he decided to take Darius Robinson's teammate out of Missouri at 61, Enos Rakestraw Jr. So naturally, one has to ask this question. Did Brad Holmes make the right pick? It's kind of like a, well, what might have been kind of situation here. Because I don't think it's a buyer's remorse situation. You can't have buyer's remorse when it's only been literally a couple of days, maybe a week at that. But it's one of those things where it's like, what might have been the case had we done this kind of situation? Now, I'm going to state this right now. I 100%, unequivocally, believe in my heart of hearts that Brad Holmes did indeed make the right decision, the right pick, going with Terrion Arnold over Darius Robinson. However, I also know that as a podcaster, it is my job to take a look at all perspectives. It's to take a look at all sides. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, and I'm going to see both sides of the argument, so that way we can kind of see what could have possibly been the difference had we gone with Darius Robinson. So that's what we're going to do. So let's first consider the fact that when we take a look at the Lions defense as it stands right now, outside of Hutchinson, the rest of the defense was largely inconsistent and absent in being able to have an impact in being, to pressure or sack the quarterback. The only real exception that I could possibly come up with that you could make a case for might be defensive tackle Aleem McNeil. Before Aleem McNeil got injured, during about the, I'd say 3/4 of the way through the season, he actually had like 5.5 sacks, and he was looking really, really good. But then he got injured. He was out for 4 weeks, so that kind of put a little bit of a speed bump into his season. But outside of that, there really wasn't anybody that was really consistent in getting after the quarterback like Hutchinson was able to. However, the issue is that Hutchinson, even though he's great at doing what he does, had over 100 pressures last year, had a 10-plus sack season, actually it was 11 and a half. Hutchinson is great at doing what he does. The problem is that Hutchinson being the only verified, consistent threat as a pass rusher, he is constantly getting double and sometimes even triple teamed because offenses know that they don't really have to worry about the other side of the formation because there's not the same kind of pass rush tenacity that Hutchinson has. So when you know that, you can commit more resources to trying to take out Hutchinson because the other side of the defense you don't really have to worry about as much. And since Hutchinson normally lines up on the left side of the defense, which is usually the right tackle, that means that now the best blocker, your best pass blocker on the opposite end, he doesn't really have much to worry about. So you can put all your resources on the other side where typically since there's more right-handed quarterbacks than left-handed quarterbacks, that's where you're going to want to put more of your pass blocking specialists like tight ends, running backs, and all that other stuff to keep the quarterback safe. Hence the reason why this is a problem for Hutchinson. Hence the reason why for some Lions fans, they have been very adamant about getting Hutchinson some help. Now, I'm just going to say this. Adding Darius Robinson, at the very least, would have given at least the better perception of a pass rushing threat, more so than what we currently have right now. Because let's understand what the Lions currently have on the opposite side of the defense of Hutchinson in terms of pass rush specialists. We have Marcus Davenport. Okay, he's a veteran. He has experience. But the main problem with Davenport, he's got a lot of injury problems. He has a lot of injury concerns. This is a prove-it-year deal for him. He's got to prove he can stay healthy. Otherwise, realistically, his career is kind of over with. Then on top of that, the next person you have is Matthew Betts. Matthew Betts was absolutely exceptional, excellent, stellar in the CFL, won their Best Defensive Player of the Year award. But the last time he was in the NFL, he didn't do very well. So he's a bit of an unproven commodity when it comes to the NFL. So you have to see what he can provide once he actually starts going up against NFL-level talent. Then you have James Houston, who is coming off of a serious ankle injury, and on top of that, he was pretty much, at this point, the very definition of a Cinderella story. Hey, he looked great for 8 games, got 8.5 sacks, but now we don't know if he's going to be able to be the long-term solution opposite of Hutchinson. So realistically, what you have is a lot of question marks opposite of Hutch. At least if you'd have drafted Darius Robinson, you would have had at least a somewhat decent answer to say, yeah, he's going to be the guy opposite, because this is a guy that we know has the ability to get after the quarterback. So that's point number 1 as far as playing devil's advocate. Point number 2, let's understand this. Had Darius Robinson been drafted by the Lions could have still actually traded to get another corner, because let's understand something here. When the second round started, there was still a pretty good amount of cornerbacks that were left on the board. You had Cooper DeJean, you had Kool-Aid, you had Kamari Lassiter, you had TJ Tampa. There were still a lot of solid cornerbacks that the Lions could have traded up into the second round to get, and, got that second corner if they wanted to. And then drafted, Enos Rakestraw at 61. Or if they didn't want to do that, they still could have sat at 61 and drafted Rakestraw. The point is, they still could have had a cornerback. They still could have had an edge rusher. So what I'm trying to say here is this, that you could have still gotten a cornerback to improve your defense, like what the plan was, but you also could have gotten a pass rusher like Darius Robinson, who had stated he wanted to come to Detroit. He is a Michigan native, so it would have made a lot of perfect sense from that perspective, and you would have had, again, an answer to the questions of who's going to be the top pass rusher opposite of Hutchinson. Then there's the third point to play for devil's advocate. We also have to consider that while it is great to have a good secondary, it's great to have a good to great cornerback room, you also have to have a great pass rushing threat. And that is what you need to be able to get home to quarterback, to sack the quarterback. Because if there's one thing I know, and if there's one thing I've heard from a lot of fans, is that, listen, you can have all the great cornerbacks in the room, or in the world, pardon me, but there's a problem. Cornerbacks can't cover forever. You can't realistically expect a cornerback to cover for 6, 7, 8 seconds. They're not going to be able to do it. At most, you might get 3, 4, maybe 5 if you're lucky. And the problem is that the NFL is making it ever more increasingly difficult for cornerbacks to play their positions, to do their job, because there's now there's more evidence than ever that it's more difficult for these cornerbacks to play physical without getting flagged. So it's kind of like, hey, they can't even really do anything. They kind of just are letting the wide receivers run and roam freely back there. So it's more difficult than ever for them to provide adequate coverage. So your counteract move to that is to provide more pressure and sack the quarterback. Now, I will say this. Last year, the Lions were the best team in the NFL in being able to pressure the quarterback. They had the number one defense in terms of total quarterback pressures. That's great. The problem is not getting pressure on the quarterback. The problem is sacking the quarterback. Because while we were the number one pressure rate defense, we were tied for 23rd in the NFL in terms of sacks. I don't know how in the hell you can be the number one pressurized defense but only get 23rd in sacks. That to me just does not compute. How can you have such a big gap between pressures and sacks is beyond me. I don't get that. So for me, I know that for a lot of Lions fans, it's like, yes, it's great that we got the cornerbacks now, but we don't have anybody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. If you'd have gotten Darius Robinson, you could have at least had that point there to say, hey, we went out and we got a cornerback in the second round or the first round, whatever the case might have been, and then you would have gotten somebody else as an edge rusher, even if it wasn't Darius Robinson. But since we're talking about Darius Robinson, get him in the first round at pick 24 or whatever they would have traded up for, and then get a solid cornerback in pick number 2 in the second round. That's the devil's advocate argument here. Now, I'm going to say this. I am a very, very strong proponent for Terrion Arnold as the Lions selection. I made a video about it yesterday. I stand by the video. And I will continue to stand by my belief that Terrion Arnold is going to be a great pick for the Detroit Lions. So let's first and foremost just understand how, again, I'm trying now to take this away from the devil's advocate perspective and now go back to, okay, here's why I believe, yet again, Arnold was the right guy and why I believe Arnold is going to be a great Lion. Let's just first and foremost understand the difference in value between the two players in terms of their draft chart positions. Because again, one thing I know that Brad Holmes doesn't necessarily care for is mock drafts. But I do know that when it comes to draft value, most GMs will take a look at prospects and see mostly the exact same thing. There's a couple of oddities here and there, but most of the time GMs will see the exact same thing as other GMs. Here's why I'm saying this. Take a look at Arnold. When you take a look at Arnold through PFF and through ESPN, probably the two biggest, sports analyzing businesses right now in terms of the NFL, PFF had this to say about Arnold. They rated him their third best cornerback in the draft and the 14th best overall prospect. For the Lions, they gave a pick grade, so the grade of the pick that the Lions got Arnold at pick 24 as an elite grade. When you take a look at ESPN, ESPN had Arnold as the second best cornerback in their draft board and the 11th best overall prospect, and they said that the pick value for him was a massive steal. So what you're getting from both PFF and you're getting from ESPN is that, hey, this guy is considered one of, if not the best prospect in terms of the cornerback room. He's right up there. He's considered one of the best prospects in the draft, and the Lions getting him where they got him was an absolute just steal. It was a great pick. It was great on value, the whole 9 yards. That's Terrion Arnold. When you flip on the other side and you go to Darius Robinson, take a look at PFF. PFF had Darius Robinson as the 8th best pass rusher. Best edge rusher, pardon me. He was the 61st best overall prospect according to their draft board. They gave the pick grade for the Cardinals taking him at pick 27 below average. When you then flip onto ESPN's side of things, they said that he was the 5th best edge rusher on their draft board and the 30th best overall prospect. And they said that the pick value for him going to the Cardinals, was perfect, which, let's think about it. The Cardinals picked at pick 27. He was considered the 30th best prospect. That's right there in that range. So what I'm trying to point out here is that, take a look at Arnold. The consensus between both PFF and ESPN and virtually almost every other kind of draft board analysts will say that the Lions got a massive steal, a value pick for getting Arnold at pick 24. And again, many people I'm going to say this, most analysts, most draft experts, they did not think that Arnold was going to last past pick 15, let alone pick 20. So the fact that the Lions got him at pick 24, absolutely insane. Like, that was something that if you'd have gone back a month and a half, 2 months ago, there is no way you would have convinced anybody that Arnold was going to last that long on the draft boards. Not a chance. But when you take a look at Robinson, there is a clear division on what his value is for the pick that he was at, which is pick 27. PFF, in essence, took a look at the pick and said, this is a massive reach. Because, again, he was the 61st best overall prospect. We picked 61 in the draft. That was at the end of the second round. So they were saying that if the draft board had fallen the way they thought it was in just terms of value alone, he's a late second round draft pick. He got drafted in the late part of the first round. So he was drafted a whole round earlier than what he was supposed to do, at least according to PFF. If you take a look at ESPN, they're saying in essence he was drafted right where he was supposed to go, and he went to a team that needed his help as an edge rusher. The whole point is there's no clear consensus. And for me, it's like, hey, depending upon the team and depending upon the needs, that was going to influence how and where he was going to be drafted. But it wasn't like, hey, this is a guy you can't pass on. This is a guy that you should absolutely take because the value is just too great. Robinson didn't fall into that category at pick 24. Arnold, in every sense of the word, fell into that category. The value was just way too damn good to pass. Now, finally, let's analyze these two players against each other in terms of the traits that they bring and in terms of their respective production for their positions. I'm not necessarily comparing them because they don't play the same position. I'm just simply saying, what do they bring to the table as prospects? When you take a look at Terrion Arnold, he's a great overall corner. Everybody has said that. But he's amazing in man coverage, which, let's understand something here, Aaron Glenn has specifically stated he wants to go to more of a man cover scheme so that way they can blitz more, that way they can bring more pressure, that way they can do more as far as bringing pressure after the quarterback and making it more difficult on the quarterback to throw passes. Okay, that makes sense. One thing we also know about Terrion Arnold, he is stupendous in freaking being able to tackle, and his mechanics in terms of tackling are extremely sound. He's got a top program pedigree coming from Alabama, arguably the best college program in the last 20 years. When he was at Alabama, he performed very well against some of the best competition in the biggest games. Again, I just talked about this in my previous episode, but against the top-ranked teams that he played, he had a very low passer rating. He had no touchdowns. I think it was only 280 yards, and got 2 interceptions. One of them against, I believe it was Jaden Daniels in the LSU game. So again, very well against some of the top prospects that were in this draft. And then if you think about this, he has versatility. Terrion Arnold is primarily an outside cornerback, but he can play slot, and he actually has a lot of experience in slot in comparison to also being an outside corner. Now, I know for some people, like I said, the biggest knock against Arnold is the fact of his 40 time being only considered average for a cornerback. But again, that is a difference between drill speed and game speed. If you take a look at Terrion Arnold on the field, he's a lot faster than what that 4.5 time gives him credit for. So that's Terrion Arnold. And again, I'm just going to put his stats up from 2023 on the board. What you're going to see, very, very low passer rating, very high interceptions to touchdowns, very low completion percentage rate. You've got everything you're looking for in a cornerback there. Now you take a look at Darius Robinson and the traits that he provides. He is a very physically strong edge rusher. Power is not an issue with this guy. Very physically dominant. However, though, the problem with him is not necessarily his power, it's his speed. The guy had probably one of the worst 40 times I have ever seen for an edge rusher. He ran his 40 time at a 4.95. There are offensive linemen that were running faster or almost to the same speed as him. Edge rushers should be easily almost 0.2 seconds faster than linemen. Yet this dude was literally running about the same speed. Now, some people are going to say, well, David, didn't you just say the opposite for freaking Terrion Arnold? Okay, I could understand that in the case for Darius Robinson, if maybe he ran like a 4.8, maybe a 4.75. But a 4.95, no, that's way too big of a difference to try and make the drill speed versus game speed argument. When you're literally almost running a 5 flat 40 as an edge rusher, that's a problem. I can almost run a 5 flat 40, and I haven't played football in damn near a decade. Then you take a look at the other things that Robinson has. Just like freaking, Terrion Arnold, he's extremely versatile. He can play both inside and outside. That's one of his biggest draws, is the fact that he can play as a defensive tackle or as an edge rusher because he has that size, he has that power, he has that capability. Then you take a look at the last other parts about it. He has a variety of pass rush moves. This guy literally knows how to get after a guy, whether it's with the power move, whether it's with the swim move, there's no limit to the amount of moves that this guy uses to get after people. It makes blocking him very tricky. He can be a very strong run defender, but one of his problems also is that he has a problem sometimes finishing tackles. His sack production for a first-round draft pick as an edge rusher is not there. It's not as strong as it should be. And then finally, one of the other things that I noticed when I was going through his profile, this guy spent 5 years in college, but yet he's nowhere near as polished as other edge rushers that came out of this class. So to me, it's like you spent more time in college than virtually any other edge rusher that you had in this class, and yet you're nowhere near as polished. That to me is a little bit of a red flag. When you take a look at his stats from his last year in college, he had 29 tackles, 14 of them were for a loss. That's very good. He had 8.5 sacks. That's not great, but that's not terrible. That's kind of like average. He had 27 hurries on the quarterback. Again, that's respectable. That's very good. But his missed tackle percentage was through the damn roof. It was 19.4%. I'm sorry, as a defender, you should never have your freaking missed tackle percentage that high, especially if you're an edge rusher. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. You have to be able to tackle and tackle very well. So for me, there are just some things about Darius Robinson where it's like, man, there's a lot of great things I like about him, but there's also some things where it's like, there's some red flags that are popping up here that make me wonder. So my whole point is, to sum this up, I once again unequivocally state and believe that the Lions got the right pick. They made the right decision with Terrion Arnold. And I don't think for most people they would argue that that what I'm saying is incorrect. But I do know that there are a lot of Lions fans that would have preferred us getting an edge rusher. And with the fact that Darius Robinson was on the board, and this report is saying that if Arnold was not there, they would have gone with him, it definitely makes some people I know wonder. It definitely makes them start thinking, what would have happened? All I'm going to simply say is this. I believe that Terrion Arnold is going to be a much better player for the Lions than Robinson would have been had we drafted him instead. I believe that Holmes knows what he's doing. I believe that his judgment has been proven right time and time again every step of the way since becoming the GM of the Detroit Lions. And what I'm looking forward to now is a no-fly zone in Detroit for the next season and for several seasons to come. But having said that, I believe I've presented my evidence very well, so I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage all to watch the next episode. Also encourage all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and now had a chance to do so, again, please subscribe. It helps out the channel. I'm thankful for every single subscription I can get my hands on. You guys are an awesome and amazing crowd. But I also want to encourage all that after you subscribe, if you so choose to do so, make sure you put on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. I also encourage, please share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more you guys share it, the greater the channel grows, the greater the channel spreads, and I'm thankful for that as well. And with that being said, I hope everyone has had a great day. I hope everyone has something that makes them happy, that makes them smile. I hope you all enjoyed the content. And with that, I just want to say to everybody, God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.